right, librarians. I I have to admit, the first thing that pops into my head is, well, someone shushing me in a silent library.
Maybe with a giant finger wagging at you.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe there's a cat, like sleeping on a stack of books.
Oh, absolutely. Can't forget the cat. But the stuff you shared from RoleCatcher about, what this job actually is these days, well, it kind of seems like those stereotypes are like completely wrong.
Yeah, you said it. So to get us started, what did you find out about this career from, RoleCatcher?
Well, they really get into like the skills and all the stuff that librarians need to know these days.
They even had stuff about the interview, which I'm guessing is a pretty big deal because just getting a job as a librarian seems really hard.
You can be. Yeah.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves, so let's take a step back for a minute.
Right.
What do librarians even do these days? Because it's more than just books now, right?
Well, it is still about books. But, and I think you'll agree with me on this one, have you ever tried to research something online and just gotten completely lost in all the information?
Oh my God, yes. All the time.
Yeah, it's too much.
Way too much.
And that's where, a good librarian comes in.
Okay.
They help you find what you need and figure out what it all means.
Okay, so how does that actually work?
Well, it's not just books. We're talking digital archives, databases, even stuff in virtual reality.
Wow, okay, that's a lot. And RoleCatcher really stressed how important that whole information navigation thing is.
Right, because it's not just public libraries anymore.
Yeah, I had no idea they even worked in museums.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
What do they even do in a museum?
Well, museums have tons of old documents, photographs, all kinds of historical stuff.
Right.
And librarians are the ones who take care of it all and help people, learn from it.
That actually sounds really interesting. I never would have thought about that.
Yeah, it's a cool gig. And that's just one example. They're also in universities and government places. Even corporations are hiring librarians.
So with how fast technology is changing, this is definitely not a boring career.
Not even a little bit.
RoleCatcher even had a whole section on how technology is changing the job.
Right. And it's only going to get more important, being good with tech.
Yeah.
Because think about it, these days, knowing how to use technology is just as important as, reading.
That's true.
And librarians, they have to be on top of all that new stuff, whether it's online catalogs or digital libraries, even that VR stuff we were talking about.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not just about knowing how to use a computer. You've got to be really good with technology.
You've got to be an expert.
Okay, so we're talking way more than just Dewey Decimal and dusty shelves here.
Yeah, no kidding.
This is a career that demands you're on top of the latest tech trends.
Absolutely. And that constant evolution is actually one of the most appealing things about this field. It's definitely not a career where you just learn everything on day one and coast for the next 30 years.
Right. RoleCatcher even mentioned something about digital asset management as a specialization. What even are digital assets in a library setting? It sounds kind of intense.
It's a pretty big job, actually.
Okay.
You know how, libraries have all those old documents and photos and maps, stuff like that?
Yeah.
Well, now they're putting all of that online.
Right.
And librarians are the ones who have to, organize it all and make sure it's saved properly.
So they're like digital archivists almost.
Exactly. And they have to make sure that people can actually find this stuff, make it searchable so anyone can access it.
Wow, so they're preserving history, basically.
Honestly, yeah.
That's really cool. So, what kind of person is good at this kind of job?
That's a good question.
Because, I'll be honest, the first thing that comes to mind is someone who just, loves to read.
Well, it definitely helps to love books, but yeah, you're right. There's a lot more to it than that.
Okay.
RoleCatcher actually had this whole section on the pros and cons of being a librarian, and they talked about the skills you need.
What kind of skills?
Well, they said that reading comprehension is super important.
Okay, that makes sense.
And also active listening and critical thinking.
Those seem like pretty, general skills, though.
Yeah, they are. And that's what I thought was really interesting. It's not just about being good at, library stuff. It's about having skills that are useful in any part of life.
That's a really good point, actually.
Right. Reading comprehension, that's how you learn new things, whether you're reading a textbook or just a news article online.
Yeah.
And active listening, that helps you in your relationships, your job, everything.
Right.
And critical thinking, well, that's how you make good decisions,
Yeah, it's like how you cut through all the noise and figure out what's actually true.
Exactly.
Especially these days with so much information out there. It feels like you really need to be able to, analyze everything and not just believe what you see at first glance.
100%. And those are the same skills that make a good librarian, you know? They're trained to sort through all the information out there and figure out what's reliable and what's not.
So even if someone's not like dead set on being a librarian, they can still get a lot out of thinking about these
Oh,
skills
absolutely.
because they're valuable no matter what you end up doing.
Exactly. So, okay, we've talked about the skills, but what about the actual career path?
Yeah, like what are the different things you can do as a librarian?
Well, there's a lot more variety than you might think.
Okay, like what?
Well, you've got your typical reference librarians, of course,
Right?
but there are also archivists, people who specialize in like rare books and documents.
Oh, cool.
RoleCatcher even mentions something called a collection development librarian.
Election development. What is that? Like choosing which books the library buys.
It's kind of like that, yeah. They decide what books, journals, databases, all that stuff should be in the library's collection.
So like they have to know what people are interested in reading these days.
Exactly. They've got to stay on top of trends and also think about their community's specific needs. And of course, they have to work within the library's budget.
It's kind of a powerful position when you think about it. Like they have a lot of influence over what people have access to.
For sure. For sure.
And that just goes to show that like it's not a dead-end job, which I think is a stereotype people still have about librarians.
Oh, absolutely not. If anything, it's the opposite.
Okay, how so?
Well, RoleCatcher pointed out that a lot of librarians end up in management positions.
Oh, okay.
Or they move into related fields like information management or, digital archiving, stuff we were talking about before.
So there's actually like room for growth and advancement.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's say someone is listening to this and thinking, hey, maybe this is the career for me. What would be like the first step?
Well, it's a competitive job market. I won't sugarcoat it.
Yeah, I bet.
It's not uncommon to see like hundreds of applications for one position, especially at like universities or big libraries.
Wow, yeah.
But, don't let that discourage you. If you're really passionate about it and you prepare well, you can definitely stand out from the crowd.
So how do you stand out, with that many people applying?
Well, RoleCatcher had some good tips for like nailing the interview.
Okay, so like how to prepare.
Yeah, they had some examples of questions they might ask you and how to answer them in a way that makes you look good.
Like what? What kind of questions?
Well, one that stood out to me was describe your experience working with diverse populations.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's a big one for librarians. They work with people from all different backgrounds.
Right. It'd be hard to like think of something on the spot.
Right. So it's good to have some stories prepared beforehand.
Okay, so like what if you haven't, worked in a library before?
Well, think about other experiences you've had. Have you volunteered anywhere? Or maybe been part of a club or group with people who are different from you?
Yeah, okay. I get it.
The important thing is to show that you can like connect with people from all walks of life.
Right, because at the end of the day, that's what librarians do, right? They help everyone.
Exactly. And this is where those skills we talked about earlier come in handy, like being a good listener and being able to communicate clearly.
Right, because those are important no matter what job you have.
Absolutely. But they're especially crucial for librarians.
Yeah, totally. It's funny because when you think about it, librarians are kind of like, I don't know, like guardians of information almost.
Ooh, I like that.
Because in a world where everyone's like overwhelmed with information, it's the librarian who helps you make sense of it all.
Right. And to figure out what's actually true, which is so important these days.
Totally. It's like with all the fake news and stuff, you really need someone you can trust to help you sort through it all.
Exactly. And that's what's so great about librarians. They're trained to be objective and look at information from all sides.
So they can help us like, be more informed citizens and not just believe everything we read online.
100%. They teach us how to think critically and how to find reliable sources.
It's a pretty amazing profession when you think about it that way.
It really is. So the next time you walk into a library, just remember that there's a whole lot more going on than meets the eye.
Yeah, it's way cooler than people realize.
Totally. And who knows, maybe someone listening will be inspired to become a librarian themselves.
I hope so. This has been really eye-opening. Thanks for diving into this with me.
Of course. Always happy to talk about the power of libraries.